So for me, there's a God makes the universe. I function in a very biblical way that way. One God makes everything. He's in charge of everything, and what you want to call it, you can call it. In privacy of my own thought, usually the word Lord is what I think in terms of. I was very early on directed towards and impressed by the writings of Pseudo-Dionysius, the Areopagite, Saint Denis, as he's also called. And his wonderful book, very little book, it's like 40 pages, The Divine Names, where he basically says, anything you can call God is you engaging in an act of calling. So neither the name God, nor the name Yahweh, nor any other name is anything other than a human artifact that designates the one we have no actual way of designating. And that's good enough. And that's what people have to understand. It's good enough. What matters, Buber, somewhere, people gave him a hard time. He was using the word God, and they didn't like how he was so free and easy using the word God. And he says, look, who the hell you think the world prays to? They pray to you. It's you they talk to. And if you is okay being known by the name God, what's it to some philosopher, Because actually people don't pray to God, we pray to you in that moment of prayer. The you who has no name. My first experience, and I wouldn't have called it religious at the time, in retrospect I know. As a result of scholarship I know. But I went to a music festival. Just outside town, I forget where. August 71. And I did acid. A friend and I did acid. It's a brilliant sunny day. We're sitting in a field that wasn't mown, so the grass was maybe 12, 15 inches tall. We're sitting in it, talking. And I don't remember exactly how it went, but somehow got into a discussion about love, and my friend proposed hate, love and hate, the great antitheses. And I thought about it, never having thought much about it. And it occurred to me I didn't really believe that hate was the opposite of love. For me it seemed like it's really fear that is the opposite of love. What keeps people from loving is fear. They're not blocked in their loving by hate, they're blocked by fear. And as I was saying that, I guess the whole universe seemed quite ordinary, but also quite still. And a grasshopper landed on my finger here. And it just sat there. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute. I give it a wiggle, it doesn't want to move, it wants to sit. finally, after I'd said to my friend, will you look at this? This animal is without fear of me. And he said, nah. So he conventionalized it, but in fact it was extraordinary period of time. I eventually took the grasshopper's foreleg in my fingers and put it on the next blade of grass and tipped its ass up in the air, and finally it went on and then off it flew. But it was so totally at peace with me and I with it. And something happened, emotion. For 11 days I was without anger. My father thought I'd gone nuts, because how could I be so understanding and compassionate? The guy I was with said I'd satoried. He had no idea what the word meant, but he used it. He used it in the San Francisco way, which I guess meant you were high as a kite. But in fact, I had reached some level of extraordinary compassion. 11 days without losing my temper. I eventually got normal again. The world wears you down. But it taught me something really important about what's internal and what's external. And really profoundly persuaded me that what's the matter with this world is we're all afraid of each other. That if we got past our fear, we'd take the chances to live nice. If we lived nice, it'd all be fine. And so in that sense, there was an awareness also that salvation was within our reach if only we would go that direction. Because it's all about getting past our fear and acting in love. So that was a hugely important experience. Somebody pointed me at Rudolf Otto really early, like within the first few months of my trying to figure out what's going on. I read Otto, and Otto made sense to me. He was describing experiences the like of which I'd had. And his point was that the numinous is a quality. It's not a thing. This is very different than anything, say, Eliade ever wrote about the sacred. And there was really a very strong split in opinion between different schools of thought. Otto, as I read him and as I was taught him, and the man who taught me was 3 generations from Otto. That is, Otto taught Soderblom, and Soderblom taught Arbman taught Altrans, and Altrans taught me. It was 5 generations from the man's own mouth. His understanding was that it's like beauty. Is an experience of beauty an experience of a thing? And we say no, because the same painting that may be drop dead, gobsmacking gorgeous, in one moment you can be bored with another moment, right? So that the quality of the beautiful has to do with something that happens in the moment of experiencing. The numinous, similarly, it's in the eye of the beholder for the duration of the beholding. It comes and it goes. And I believe it comes and it goes for everybody. I believe when we talk about things like the beauty of a sunset, we're talking about the numinous. And it's because certain things really provoke it in us. The sight of a newborn child, for most people, arouses a feeling of something that is awe and majestic and absolutely true and totally, there's an unreal quality to it. It's something more than just ordinary. And all of that's the numinous. And it's not freaky, weird, otherworldly, it's not supernatural, it's part of the intrinsically, the very real natural. So that's what numinous meant, as I understand it. And then to just live a life where you stop and smell the roses, you stop and experience the wondrous as you can. I mean, for me, there's a particular bridge driving down Spadina, heading south off St. Clair, over the Don Valley. The trees there, well before the big ice storm, were just fantastic. And I could count on it day after day. I'd drive there and I'd stop and I'd get a moment of half relax and I'd remember God. And that would be part of just driving to work. The numinous, the best explanation I ran across is it's an emotion, a feeling, a body of ideas aroused by reaching the limit. I mean, there is no going beyond infinity. So the concept of infinity arouses thoughts of or experience of the numinous. You look at a newborn child, there's no going beyond, it's sort of a limit. Your mind reaches such a point, and then you can't go beyond that point, and you're thinking there just is a terminus. And the terminus makes you think of the maker of the terminus. That's built into the very notion of the terminus, is the notion of the creator. Whether it's verbalized or not, it's sort of part of what you feel. So that's numinous. Now, mystic depends how the term's used. There's if you go by current publishing, first-year textbooks, comparative mysticism, which is to say what they're teaching first-year students in universities these days. Well, they're including things that would never have been included 40 years ago, because the imperative is ecumenism. So Native Americans get stuck in there, and Native Americans don't have unitive experiences, or didn't classically. I mean, I'm sure there were individuals who had them, but they weren't prized culturally. What was prized culturally was a vision. So now we have visions as included within the definition of mysticism. I'm totally fine with that, because I have no desire to exclude anyone. For academic purposes, it's nice to be precise, and we can say, well, there was no real value. Or we could turn it upside down. What is the social conditions under which an experience of cosmic unity, well, which I had a version of, a universe at love without fear. That was certainly mystical. It wasn't me uniting with God. There was no notion of God in my mind at that time. I didn't become theistic till later. But the mystical in each of us, the tendency towards unity, I think we all have. I think it's part of what we're born with. It is eros in Freud's extended sense of the term, where all ultimately strives to be one. It's like, Freud cites the fact that cell walls stick together. He cites, the physics, the forces of attraction. For him, this is all part of eros. And eros, at its notion of sexual love, is part of the same. It is the whole tendency to aggregate, and it's what life is about. That is, life itself is an abstraction, but the abstraction refers to this tendency to build ever more complicated structures that become self-replicating, fulfilling in some ways, I don't know. But at any rate, that's life, is And it's the disintegration, the falling apart. That is what death is. And these are fundamental factors at work in the universe. I went through a process. I mean, it began with that August 71 experience of the world without fear. But I would say the process lasted probably well into the next summer, where I had to decide how I would live. You know, I dug out the Ten Commandments and read them one night. Decided one by one, did I believe in these? What might I believe in instead of those? Which, you know, at the time, because of my naivete, I think it involved more temerity than I would do it now, but it seemed to me that it was wrong, that there is no prohibition of slavery in the top 10. It seemed to me that we could, that certainly already the criticism you have out of Jesus, that the love of one's fellow belongs in the top 10, it shouldn't be buried in the back of the book of Leviticus. And the rabbis agreed that it's, you know, Maimonides lists the love of God as number 1 and the love of one's fellow as number 2. If you go there, the honor of one's parents sort of takes, you know, could be a corollary. Because how do you love a parent? Well, a parent is entitled to a little special kind of love. But what I was saying was there was a period of months, almost a year, where I went through, call it ethical development, got rid of the hypocrisy, decided on the things I believed in. I believed that it shouldn't just be prohibition to lie under oath, but the prohibition to lie, period, belonged in the top 10. I mean, we're a species, we get by lying all the time. We lie out of fear, we create fear by lying. It's just a terrible thing, lying. And sometimes we have to. But really, it's something that if we lied less, we'd be a happier species. And so, what I'm pointing to, I mean, I'm going back and forth between two themes here, that there is a process, they now call it formation, right? In Catholic teaching, is the formation of a spiritual character. That's learning how to be a good person, essentially. And that's very important. The exact connection between ethical development and these spiritual experiences, numinous, mystical, and other kinds, you know. Nobody's worked that one out yet. When I did my study for my MA, where I did a huge survey of psychedelic experiences, I had no idea that there were that many varieties of psychedelic experience. When I went looking for, well, what else is out there? You know, it was like discovering that there was a ton of stuff nobody had talked about, and who knew what it might turn out to be. And I wasn't concerned to say this is real, this is not real, this is a hallucination, this is a vision. What I was really concerned about is the person who's doing this a good human being? And if they were, that was all I needed to know, because that was what was important. Are people doing right by each other? or are they looking for some excuse to do wrong, you know? And unfortunately, there's too much of that. There's too much grandstanding, and I have the access to the truth as though there were only one, or what, you know, and all that stuff. Somewhere along the way, I guess, I've decided I'd subscribe to the label postmodern. I don't know what that means. I don't think anybody does. But I'm against the notion that somebody has access to the one and only truth. For me, unitive phenomena are all about integration. You take a thing that you have another thing you have, and maybe you make something greater than the pair of them put together. There's I forget the word for it, but where the sum is greater than the whole. Or the whole, yeah, there's something happens in the moment of integration, like an opposable thumb, something. And so for me, the question of transcendence doesn't arise. It doesn't pertain to a situation like that, unless one redefines terms. And I think I may have developed a concept surrounding transcendence that really had something to do with people rejecting the world we have. I mean, I've always been aware that I am into what Stace, is the man's name, a philosopher, called extroverted mysticism. It's a mysticism of this world. It is not where you go some private inner place that no one else in the universe has access to, and you say, I and I alone have this special something. Nah, for me it's the whole thing put together, and it's glorious. And it is an ultimate integrative kind of a thing. That was the kind that happened for me and seemed wonderful. And the rare occasions when I've had that other, I found it appallingly lonely. To be that lonely in what he calls an introverted mysticism is not what I would reach for, you know. Give me my option, it's not what I want. Because it's as if it's a mysticism for the sake of the word. It's not a mysticism that's put into action something in the world. That may be my prejudice, and like I say, for me the ultimate item is always the ethics. This way, you see, there's a part of me that is profoundly and typically Jewish. The ethics are primary. I mean, everything, every day of a life alters your views a little bit. Some events throw you more of a curve, so it's harder to hit that curveball than some other ones. I had a few days where I was profoundly shaken or very upset, and then I found my way back to being me again. And so no, I'm at peace with God. The universe unfolds as it does, and I trust will continue to do so. I've never understood much of it. Tiny little fragment that I can be pompous enough to think I'm even expert about, but it's a tiny fragment of the whole. Why should I, now that I'm dying, would wish to have more information about something? Yeah, so I don't. It's a big deal. Well, I remain convinced that good comes of it. Dying is part of the unfolding of good. I believe life itself is a gift, so it's time to return the gift. So big deal.